Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail Podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail.
All right, guys, welcome back to Mission Whitetail, episode 61. Middle of July, things are starting to get exciting. The season is not too far away, especially here in South Carolina. August 15th is our opener. So, yeah, Adam's laughing in the background. It's going to be 100 degrees and mosquitoes as big as hummingbirds, but we'll be in the tree. Today, got Adam Hayes back. He's become a regular. Probably just needs to end up being the co-host of the Mission Whitetail podcast. But seems like we talk every week, and there's an interesting topic that comes up, and we always say, man, we need to dive in that and talk about it on a podcast. So very, very fortunate to have Hayes as a buddy. He's a wealth of knowledge, big buck killing machine. And yesterday we were talking, and want to talk today about the different predicting apps that are out there now. Obviously, Adam and I resurrected the Moon Guide, and Adam turned that thing into an app and really is taking that thing and run with it big time and gotten a lot of feedback, great feedback over the years with it. But then you've got other apps out there. I think you have Spartan Forage maybe has a predicting app. You've got the thing the Drurys have. What's that one called, Adam? The Deercast app. So you've got multiple apps out there that are predicting deer movement based on some some moon data, weather data, pressure data, and some other things that all come together. But we'll dive into that. But first off, I mean, since this is kind of technology, if you will, and how it relates to hunting, I thought we start off maybe by talking about Ozonics, because I've gotten a bunch of messages. Do you like Ozonics personally? Do you not like Ozonics? Have you used Ozonics? And I will be the first to say I don't have a lot of experience with Ozonics. And anytime you're going to have an opinion on something, I feel like you need to have a lot of experience with it. The experience I have, it hasn't been great. You know, it has been, I don't really know how to describe it. I mean, I'll get into, my experience with it after you kind of go for a while, Adam, because when I think about Ozonics, I think about you and I think about Adam Crumrin, two guys that kill big deer religiously, and it's pretty much, other than family, their full-time passion, and in your instance, job. So I know you're not going to use a product that's going to mess you up, because the success that you have in the deer woods puts food on your table. So let's talk about Ozonics, and you go and tell me your experience on it and how you got started with it and how you've seen it progress over the years. And then I'll get into my experience, and my experience is more anecdotal than actually years and years and years of using it. So fire away, man. I've talked enough here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely honest, I was skeptical about it at first, before I ever tried it. And, like you, most of my hunting is done self-filming. Actually, you're using a camera guy more these days than in the past. But, I've always been a self-filming guy, and I've already got enough crap to drag out in the woods with me. It seems like my pack gets heavier every year, but I didn't need something extra to take with me on top of all my hunting gear I was already packing and all my filming gear. So I was not looking for something extra to take with me. I'm taking 40, 50 pounds of gear in the tree already. So I was skeptical about it, and I tried it. And the first season, I was blown away. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about. Ozonics, the Moon Guide, mechanical broadheads. I don't think that anything out there works 100% of the time. Nothing. The only thing definite about hunting big deer is nothing's ever definite, especially when it comes to equipment. But I gotta say, man, after 6 or 7 years of using it, the odds are heavily stacked in favor of it working. I've just seen it work too much, and I've kind of created a scenario with the way that I hunt. I'm always hunting, very marginal wins. My success on killing big deer consistently changed drastically when I quit hunting wins that were good for me and started hunting wins that were good for the animal that I was hunting, which creates a scenario where you're splitting hairs on the wind all the time. And if there's something out there that's going to help, in that situation, because I'm giving a big buck the win to his advantage, I was all for it. So that was really why I tried it. And yeah, I've just seen it work too many times. I can think of a few instances where it didn't work, but like I said, I don't think anything works 100% of the time. But on my home farm, like we were talking about yesterday, I've got like a tree line that kind of separates my two food plots, and it's the best spot on my farm. But most of the time when I'm hunting that tree line, I'm going to have deer coming in the downwind side of me in that downwind plot, and more times than not. And I just if you take 10 sits in that tree row, 9 times deer that have come downwind of me have not picked me off. Not saying that it's worked every single time, but the majority of the time. And I'm all about stacking the deck in my favor. And I really, honestly, like I said, I wouldn't be dragging it out in the woods if it didn't work. And I'm to the point now where if I'm in the situation where I'm after a really big deer and I know that wind is going to be super marginal, I'll hunt with 2 of them.
Yeah. That's what Crumrin does. Crumrin, I think, hunts with 2 of them all the time.
Yeah. I mean, when you get winds, it doesn't seem like winds are ever super consistent. You'll get a steady breeze, but 1 minute it'll be blowing right where it's supposed to, and the next minute it might shift, 30 or 40, yards off to one side or the other. So the way that Ozonics works coming out over top of your head, the way I kind of describe it to guys is kind of like, think of a waterfall.
Yeah.
So if you mount it up above your head, that ozone is heavier than air. It's coming out over your head and then it's falling because it's heavier. And you want it set up on your downwind side so your scent is actually blowing through that, waterfall of ozone that you can't see. And as your scent goes through that, the ozone is grabbing hold of those scent molecules and killing them.
Yeah.
And, I don't know exactly how wide that ozone waterfall is coming out of that unit because it's right above your head. I mean, the unit's 6 or 7 inches wide, so I don't know exactly how far it spreads out, but I can see instances where the wind, as it shifts, your scent might actually go around that ozone. So I'll have one, I'll have them set up side by side to actually widen that that waterfall of ozone coming out in front of me down on my downwind side. So yeah, I'm not against dragging 2 of those things out in the woods. I won't hunt without them. I believe in them that much. And I know guys like you that have had, experiences where they have had deer wind them using it. And I think more times than not, I don't want to say you're not using it the right way, but I think that it's possible for your scent just to get around, that ozone and maybe not catch all of it. So
yeah, and I think it's scientifically proven that ozone kills odors because you like these restoration companies that go in when you have a flood or whatever and they dry everything out, they put an ozone machine in there and it kills all the mildew odor and all that, and 100% into these like scent lockers, where you have does Ozonics build one of those like a scent crusher or scent, what do they call their
So
locker.
they've got a dry wash bag, which is kind of like a portable closet that you can hang up that you can get some gear in. But then they've got the big gear locker, which I've got in my garage, where it's just like a full size closet. You can put all your boots in there, your clothes, your backpacks, everything. And I was always, I was always that guy that anytime I wore something, I washed it. I never wore anything twice. And now I've got to the point where anything that touches my skin, I'll wear it one time and wash it. But my outer layers, my midweight, heavyweight Oseo will go in that locker after I wear it, and I'll run it through a dry wash cycle, and it's good to go. I keep it back,
And that's huge. Yeah, and that's scientifically proven to work. I know that for a fact.
They use them in hospitals. My best friend, his son plays hockey. They've got an ozone unit in their locker room because of the stink and the sweat on the gear and all that. It kills. I mean, yeah, they use it everywhere. Biggest testament, not related to hunting. Well, kind of related to hunting, but for me was I might have told you this story once, but I was going to a farm to check some cameras late summer, and the elderly lady that owned the farm, she was messing around in her garage. I stopped to talk to her, and she had spilt gasoline for her lawnmower in the back of her car. She'd had it professionally cleaned twice and couldn't get rid of the gasoline smell. I'm like, let me try something. Stuck my Ozonics unit in her car. We closed it up, turned it on. I went and checked my cameras. I was gone, 30, 40 minutes. Come back, it was gone.
Gone.
The gasoline smell was gone. Yeah, couldn't believe
So you kept permission on that property for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and you get. I always have my dog in the truck, and you get a little bit of that dog smell in there. Stick the Ozonics unit in there, or they've actually got a unit that you can plug into your cigarette lighter now just for your truck, for smells like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, man, I use it for everything.
Yeah, and there's definitely a use for it there, and there probably is. I'm open-minded enough to try something again. So just to kind of walk through my experience with it, the first year I tried it, I had Kevin with me as a cameraman, and we only had one of them, and it was in Kansas, and we used it. I was going to use it for the entire rut in Kansas, and like 3 or 4 of those hunts, we got busted. Right now, this was years ago. Basically back Team 200 days for me, and so I mean, how long? I mean, I know we're doing stuff now, but what was that? 10 years ago, probably.
This is season 11, so yeah, probably was 10 or 11 years.
Yeah, so that was, I don't know how long Ozonics has been out, but that was in the early stages of it for sure. And I was like, no, this is just another thing to carry in the woods. Don't want to do it. It was noisy, to put up, to set up, and I was like, no, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. But now thinking back on it, it was over my head and not Kevin.
Over Kevin's, yeah.
Wasn't over Kevin. So that makes perfect sense that if we had one over, he was off to my right side, so there was nothing blocking him.
And he was probably higher in the tree than
he was higher in the tree, 100%. So that's not giving a product a fair shake. Right? That's not giving a product a fair shake. So let's fast forward to maybe 2 years ago, and I said, all right, I think I called you and said, hey, man, I know the Ozonics machines have come a long way. Which one do I need to get? And I bought 2 of the units, whatever it was you told me to get. And this was 2 or 3 years ago. And South Carolina, early season, we hit on that a little bit a minute ago, really, really hot, really, really humid. And go up, set the unit up. I've got a feed spot. There's some muscadine vines that these bucks are coming in. I got a trail camera on it. and they're coming in pretty religiously in the afternoon. Slipped in there in the middle of the day, hung the stand, hung everything, got up in there, cut the Ozonics on, and the first thing I was blown away with was how much quieter it was, the technology, because the first one I had, it almost sounded like a fan going up there, and I couldn't hear, and I really like to hear, because to me as a hunter, you want to use all the senses you can, and it was really messing, the early stage one was really messing with my ears, but the first thing I noticed was, all right, this was pretty easy to set up. It's got kind of that, it was almost like a case, like a silent case you put around it. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't nearly as loud. I was like, man, they have really improved this thing, and it's not near as loud. So set the thing up, and probably it gets dark August here, probably 9 o'clock, probably 7:38. I look out through the swamp, and here come 2 3-year-olds. And I have a good wind, like it's blowing from them to me. It's blowing from the muscadines to me, and the Ozonics is blowing, over my head, should be doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. These 2 bucks walk in. I'm not going to shoot them. They get into about 25, 30 yards, and they just kind of lock up. They lock up. They start looking around. They're not looking at me, but I can tell they don't like something. And they end up backing up and turning around and leaving. And I'm like, they're not smelling me. They got to be smelling the ozone. But if you think about it, if the wind was blowing from me or from them to me, the ozone would have to be blowing from me the other way, right? I mean, right. It would have to be blowing that way. But now it was pretty still, super humid. I'm heavy air. I'm guessing that stuff's dropping pretty hard. Well, immediately I'm like, they smelled the ozone. So I reach up and I turn the machine off, and 45 minutes or an hour later, here comes the buck I want to shoot. He actually loops downwind and comes right under me, and I shoot him at 10 or 12 yards, and off he goes, and I go recover him. And I'm like, man, they smelled the ozone or smelled me or something. And when I turned it off, but again, that's a one-off experience, and a couple of things could have happened there. It could have been a thermal issue. It could have been a wind issue. There was not as much wind blowing then. There was not as much thermal pull as there was. There's multiple things that could have happened. Heck, they could have come in and it was still so early they were smelling my ground scent, inside 25 yards because it is so hot in the swamp. The point being, you try something 1 or 2 times, I don't think you give up on it, especially when you have guys that are just as serious about it as you are, that swear by it and have seen too many good results.
Yeah.
I think that goes with all kinds of different products. So I am 100% not anti-Ozonics, and I absolutely will have some going in my clothes lockers in my truck, to kill the odor. And I'm not afraid to try it again and give results again. And give it more than 1 or 2 times, because literally I've probably run one in the tree 5 or 6 times total. And I don't know that that's giving it a fair shake.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what you think about it after using it in the tree for a whole season, and giving it a fair shake. And if you're thinking about giving it a try, man, this is going to be a really good season to do that, just because they've completely redesigned the unit and they've made some really big changes to it. I got one of the first ones that they sent out. And by the time this airs, it'll already be public knowledge, but kind of a sneak peek right now. So the unit has changed completely.
Yeah, I see that.
They've mounted the fan up on top, which, like you were saying, that fan was a little noisy in the early years. Last year, they made a big switch, and I believe that they cut down the noise by 50% at least last year. It was a huge difference, but they moved the fan up top now, and you turn this thing on and you can't even hardly hear it. So you no longer have to. I was always mounting mine in the tree like this, so the fan was up on top. So, it wasn't right there in your ear blowing, because it was never so noisy that a deer would hear it. But when it's dead calm and you can hear a mouse fart,
Yeah.
having that fan right under your ear, I think it took away from that, just that enough to where, you weren't hearing 100% of what you normally would, maybe 95%, just with that constant hum in your ear. It definitely affected your ability to hear. But now they've completely redesigned it. It's not even an issue. It's, like I said, they cut the noise down by, I think, 50% last year, and they're saying another 20% this year. And when I turned it on, when I got the unit, I wasn't even sure it was working because I couldn't even hear it.
Yeah.
Another cool feature is, so if you always had it mounted up above you, you'd have to tilt it down to hit the buttons to turn it on or to change the modes on the front. Well, now they're on the bottom, so you don't need to move that at all. Plus, I really like this. This is a cool feature. So it's got two big red LEDs on the bottom. So like if you get in your tree in the morning,
Oh, yeah.
you can turn them on and it'll kind of illuminate, what you're doing, so you can see what you're doing. And it's red, so it doesn't spook game. But I thought that was a great feature.
Yeah, you got a little hat light that's right there with you.
Yeah,
You can see what you're doing.
Instead of a headlight, it's right on your Ozonics, which is going to be right above your head anyway.
Yeah.
Reach up, turn it on, and turn it off.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna pick up a couple of them and give them a try again. The number one defense is odor, and if you can do anything to curtail that odor, I had JJ Ducard on last week, and that's what we talked about. He's got that phase system, and we talked about the scent sprays and the foams and all of that, and he's obviously a firm believer in it. And we talked about the scent sprays and how some of those have their own odor that deer smell. But anything you can do to kill that odor, man, that is a huge feather in your cap. So yeah, man, I'm gonna get a couple more of them and give them another try. Just listening to you and Crumrin swear by them, I mean, they've got to work. So I've got to get a little more time underneath them and give it a better fair shake. And I'm going to try it out this year and see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a deer's number one defense is his nose. So the more things you can do to beat his nose, the better off you're going to be. Keeping all your gear clean, keeping yourself clean with products like, phase, using an Ozonics, to kill odor when you're in the tree. A couple of the guys on my show had been talking last couple of years about Scent Thief, which it's a similar product to like the nose jammer, but it's the only product in that line that's actually got a patent on it, because they created not a new substance, but it's basically they created a new deal to where they could actually get a patent on it, and that stuff works so well on killing a deer's ability to smell you that the government shut them down for a little bit, like they did Ozonics, because that stuff works so well.
I'll be darned.
Tarif's been using it for a couple of years and swears by it. I'm using it this year for the first time, but a lot of guys say, well, what do you need that for? What do you need an Ozonics for if you're killing your scent with phase products or whatever you're using to wash yourself with, wash your clothes with? And like I said, I just think it's the more things you can do, the better. I mean, when you go to bed at night, you lock the doors to your house, right?
I do, yeah. Or Natalie will whoop me, yeah.
After that, do you turn your alarm system on?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just double protection. So why not have double or triple protection on when it comes to your scent? It just makes perfect sense. The more things you can do to bring that scent down and try to, I don't know if you can ever going to be able to eliminate it completely, but why not, use everything at your disposal?
Yeah, and that's what, we talked about, and I've talked with some canine guys that run dogs and stuff, and they made a really good point to me. When that deer encounters odor, regardless of what it was, he has to make a decision. Is it a fresh enough doe track, during the rut that he thinks he can find that doe? Then he makes a decision, yeah, I'm going to follow this trail, or no, that's too old. Human ground scent, he walks in, he smells it. Holy moly, that is super fresh. I am out of here.
Yep.
Human odor in the stand. Is it old enough? Okay, well, yeah, I mean, that's not what I'm used to smelling that freaks me out. That's old scent, and I can walk on through here. So he depending on the level of what he smells, then he makes a decision, he's going to continue on or he's going to get out of there.
And that level of scent could even, the way a deer processes things, he might think that because that level is so low that you're not anywhere in the area. Maybe they're smelling you from further away, not realizing you're 20 yards away. So, yeah, I believe exactly what you're saying and what they're talking about. Getting that level down to a point where it's an acceptable level where that animal doesn't freak out and leave the county.
Yep, that's good stuff. Well, let's leave the Ozonics thing. We've done a podcast and a half on scent, but I'm looking forward to giving it another try and trying out this new unit. Let's go into the prediction apps and something that you're heavily involved with. Give us a rundown, and I know you got some interesting stuff coming up for the rut, and I'll just take over, man, and tell us about your experience with that and what you see coming this fall for everybody that's getting anxious to get things planned and set up.
Yeah, it is interesting what's going to take place this year because it's not really typical, and if you're not prepared for it, some guys could really find themselves in a ghost town during typical rutting time this year. Now, I've been putting together the predictions every year for not only for the rut but for the season in the Moon Guide app. I do a prediction deal where I take each month of the season and kind of give a guy an idea on what are going to be the best weeks, what the deer should be doing, how he should be hunting, where he should be hunting at, and that's all available in the app. But the rut predictions, Jeff used to have the rut guide that he sold as a dial, just like the Moon Guide. So I kind of took what Jeff did with the rut guide and with the Moon Guide, and then I've always followed Charles Alsheimer's, rut predictions. I mean, that guy did more research on deer and the rut than I think anybody in history has. And he had some really interesting theories that I've followed forever, and I know a lot of guys have. But taking all that information and kind of sitting down and combining it, looking at the calendar, seeing what the moon's going to be doing, everything's kind of based off of, the autumn equinox, which, is that time of the year where, daylight and dark are the same amount of time in the day, which always happens in September. And then the rutting moon, which is the second full moon after the autumn equinox. That's really, according to Charles' theories and some other theories, and research that I've read about, that's really the triggering point for breeding. So you have the autumn equinox, you have the second full moon after the equinox is what triggers it, and then roughly 10 to 12 days after that second full moon is when peak breeding should be taking place, when you're going to get your typical lockdown. Because normally, depending on when that full moon hits, you've got three types of ruts, basically. You'll have a synchronized rut where everything syncs up at the same time. It's typically an early November full moon, like right around the first few days. That's when the doe estrogen levels are peaking the same time as the buck's testosterone levels. And that's why they call it a synchronized rut, because everything's synced up, hitting at the same time. And that's when you just have crazy rutting action. Your second typical rut is going to be a classic rut, where that full moon is going to hit sometime, 6th through the 13th of November. You're going to have a mid-November classic rut. Should be really great. Typical, rutting action, mid-November. And then what you have this year, which is a trickle rut, which should really be called a tricky rut. And it's that full moon is kind of in between. So the first full moon hits late October. The second full moon hits late November, which it's late November, mid-November, 15th, hitting the 15th this year. So if you look at, the full moon that hits on the 15th, so if that's what triggers the rut and breeding, and you go 10 to 12 days after that, that means that actually the peak breeding and lockdown phase should be the last 6 days of November this year, which is going to be a couple weeks late.
Thanksgiving-ish, yeah.
So if you back up a week before that, that's when you're going to have bucks on the move, looking for that doe. There's going to be some chasing involved, your typical rutting action where bucks are really on the move cruising. And that's going to be, basically that, 18th to the 23rd, 24th, the week before Thanksgiving really should be the best week of the year as far as rutting action goes. Now, saying that, because it happens so late, there's a possibility that that first full moon that hits in late October could actually trigger some breeding in October. You're going to have some does that cue off that full moon in November, but there's going to be a chance where some of them can cue off the earlier full moon. And that full moon in October hits the 17th. So if you take, again, the 17th is when the full moon hits. 10 to 12 days after that, you get your lockdown, which would be roughly the 29th, 30th, 31st, right around Halloween. Back up, the week before that. So 20th through 27th, which I've always loved the last week of October. That's been my favorite week forever. Killing a lot of giant deer that last week of October. That's going to be about a week earlier this year, as far as long as the weather cooperates. So, that 20th through 27th in October should be great. And that timing hits right on the red moon.
Aha.
So that third week of October, you got the red moon happening in the evenings. If there's any does queuing off that early moon, the bucks are going to know what's going on, and they're going to really be on the move that third week. So I'm looking at the third week of October being great, and then the third week of November being really good too. So
that's good intel.
Yeah, everything's going to be shifted a little bit. Last year, everything hit super early. The second full moon last year hit like the 28th of October. So you actually had peak breeding going on that almost the tail end of the first week of November, which I saw, and I talked to a lot of guys that saw the same thing. You saw a lot of chasing going on. I was up in Canada, unfortunately, that last week of October, and things were just going bonkers on my cameras back here in the Midwest. All the deer I was looking for were up, moving, daylight, and I got home just in time for the lockdown. Everything was, it was a ghost town here at my farm. Went to Illinois, everything was just, it was a ghost town there. Just come back just in time for the lockdown. So, I didn't time that right back here in the Midwest. But, so that's what happened last year. That's what I'm expecting to happen this year. And if guys are really interested in all the detail about, October and November as far as that goes, like I said, I got a full write-up in the Moon Guide app on that stuff too. So third week in October, if the weather's right, and then third week in November. So if guys are planning some schedules, normally we look at that November 7-ish time frame as being, jam up, and I plan on being hunting somewhere that time, especially if the weather's right. But you would say focus on third week October and third week of November this year. Yep, that mid-November, 13th, 14th, 15th, it should start getting cranked up right before that full moon. And then that, the week before Thanksgiving, it should just be balls to the wall, bucks moving, chasing. Yeah, things going crazy.
All right, guys, we got Adam Hayes on record, on video for the rut prediction of 2024. I can't wait. It's going to be good.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of it is weather. You get some super hot thing, and a lot of it's happening at night. You get good cold weather, the average temperature to 5 degrees below or more than that, and then it really can go off. And let's talk a little bit more about the apps, right? About these predicting apps and guys that call hocus pocus on this, and they don't really believe in it. They don't think there's any way that it can work. There's no way to be able to predict this stuff. What do you say to that? Because you hear a lot of it. I hear a lot of it. A lot of guys listening right now are like, man, I don't know about all that. What do you say about the predicting apps? That'll take the weather, they'll take the barometric pressure, they'll take the moon, they'll put all that into a quote unquote formula and spit out, like predictions of when you need to be in the woods. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's a few factors, we've talked about it before, that are going to increase deer activity. Weather, obviously, there's no doubt the weather, can be a huge factor in increasing activity. The wind, we pay, attention to the wind probably more so than anything, because you got to have the right wind to hunt your spot. And, the moon as well. The thing about the moon is that's really the only one of those factors that you can predict months or years in advance, because you can look at the calendars and see, what weeks are when that moon's going to line up to increase daylight activity, because that's what it's all about. Can't kill a big buck if he's not moving in daylight. So when's my best chance next year when I want to plan my vacation or plan my guided hunt? You don't know what the hell the wind's going to be doing or what the weather's going to be doing. So why wouldn't you look at the moon, when you're trying to figure out that best week, months or years in advance? And like I said, there's days where the weather is going to trump the moon. I'm never going to tell somebody not to hunt if the moon is wrong. I'm hunting every day, but I might not be in my best spot, in my kill tree until I've got the right weather. Let me back up. Until I've got the right wind, the right moon, and I look at it as if I've got a weather pattern that increases activity on that night. That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah, the trifecta. And it you can relate this back to ozonics, right? I mean, the same philosophy is you go out and use ozonics one night and a deer blows at you and runs off. You go out and use a predicting app and you don't see a single deer that afternoon. You're like, this is baloney. It's hocus pocus. But again, it's about odds, right? Deer hunting, especially big deer, it's about odds and stacking the odds in your favor, and it's not a one and done thing. Open mind, pay attention to all of it. Pay attention to how the ozonics affects over a long-term play, not just one or two outings with it.
Exactly.
Pay attention to the predicting apps over a long-term play. Pay attention to the moon over a long-term play. You have one bad experience, and the words I always use are always and never. Those are two things that can't be used in hunting, because nothing is ever always and nothing is never. So keeping an open mind and trying things before you make your decision in longevity is important. But again, you hear guys, the smart aleck comment you hear is, man, that the moon keeps me out of my stand more than it keeps me in my stand, and I want to hunt. Well, the point being is, no, you're looking at it wrong. Look, if you've got a great moon, a great wind, and a great weather pattern, then you need to be in your absolute best spot that afternoon or that morning. If it's a hot day, but you've got a great wind and a great moon, then maybe you need to be in a different spot that day. Or keep right on hunting. Keep right on hunting, but make note of all of that and put your plan together, add your system and put what's working for you together, and keep track of all that stuff over time. And that's really how you elevate your game and polish your craft and make it better and better and better.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to longevity, giving something a fair shake and not just trying it once and making a decision on whether it works or not. I mean, I've been following the moon for over 30 years. I don't know anybody personally that's paid attention to the moon more than I have. I mean, that's why you and I talked about it, and we ended up buying the moon guide from Jess Family, because I had had so much history with it and so much success with it. I know it works. I don't care how many guys want to argue the fact that the moon's got nothing to do with deer movement, or how many, research or radio tracking deals they've read about where it doesn't work. I'm not buying any of that. I personally have paid attention to it long enough and seen it work too much, to the point where I'm paying attention to it, but I'm not going to tell somebody not to hunt, if the moon's not right, because like I said, I killed my, last big deer in Ohio on a night where the moon wasn't good, but I had a big mature deer making a mistake in daylight on a trail camera, and I got aggressive and dove in and killed him. I mean, when deer's moving, making a mistake in daylight, that's the one time where I'm going to kind of veer off from what my typical strategy is and go in and kill them. You got to be able to adapt to what's going on. And when something's happening, just like Andre has preached for years, you got to get aggressive and go in and kill them. But hunting big deer is all about trying to predict what they're going to do before they ever do it. And how do you do that? Well, I'm looking at the moon weeks or months in advance to know, when that red moon's hitting, when I think I'm going to have my best chances. I'm also, waiting for that right wind for that deer, so he feels comfortable enough to get up and move before dark. And like I said, as far as weather goes, hey, if a great weather pattern, it's in October and it's been 90 degrees, and all of a sudden you got a 20-degree swing in the temperature and a cold front comes in, you got to be in your tree, no matter what the moon's doing. So there's times when that weather is going to trump the moon. There's times when the moon's going to trump the weather. My biggest deer ever killed in Kansas, 220-inch deer, killed him on a night where I had a good wind and a good moon, but it was 80-some degrees out. There was no reason for that deer to be up moving, 2 hours before dark. So it's all about just stacking the deck in your favor and trying to, play the odds. When have you got your best chance at catching that deer making a mistake?
Yeah, you've got to make a decision, right? You've got to make a decision. Okay, it's Tuesday. I'm in my office, right? I've got an ability to maybe take off Wednesday afternoon or Friday afternoon, right? Those are the two afternoons my boss has told me that, that I don't have a lot going on, that I can go, but I can't do both of them. So you have to make a decision on which one of those days you're going to go. And these are all factors that can help improve those odds.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. It's good, man. And
consideration.
Yeah. It's something that needs to be paid attention to and can absolutely help you be better at what we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What else you got, man?
Man, I'm just kind of chomping at the bit, man. Summer is just rolling by. Crazy. Season's going to be here before you know it. Just trying to get everything ready, seeing some great antler growth, getting excited about what's going on, and it's going to be here before you know it.
You want to come down here August 15th and hop up in a mosquito infested?
I will check my calendar and see if I'm open that week.
See what the moon's doing August 15th.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the red moon coincides with that opener down there.
Yeah, I can promise you that I can predict the weather for you.
Yeah.
It's going to be at least 98 degrees, and it's going to be at least 80% humidity. I can go ahead and pencil that in for you. So all we need is to know the moon.
I'll tell you what I will do. I'll bust out my Osseo swim trunks, and I'll come out hang out at your pool with a cold drink. And I'll wait for that phone call when you got him on the ground.
Yeah, to come take pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's not a Speedo haze, I think we'll be okay.
Did you making them Speedos an extra large yet?
Extra large butt, tiny crotch. Yeah, I got one special ordered for you. Oh man, well, cool. Well, thank you again, as always, for doing it and hopping on. And I know the next couple of weeks we'll do another one again as we get closer to season. But appreciate it. Hope y'all have a great weekend. Give that new puppy a pat on the head for me.
Oh, yeah, I will. And for anybody that's interested, Ozonics is letting me share this discount, which I normally don't do. This is normally just for the guys that subscribe to the Moon Guide app. But you can use code MOON24 and save 20% off a new HR 600. So
Moon 24. That's what I'm gonna log in. When we get off of here, I'm gonna go order a couple of them and get them shipped in so I can try them out early season here.
There you go.
All right, buddy. Well, everybody, y'all have a great week. Any questions, concerns, as always, give us a holler, and we sure appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.